Welcome to today's video, where we'll be journeying into the heart of one of the most influential philosophical systems in history, the teachings of Confucius. If you've ever wondered why so many East Asian cultures place profound emphasis on family, respect for elders, harmonious social interactions, and moral integrity, then you're in the right place. Confucius, known in Chinese as Junzi or Confucius, lived over 2,500 years ago, yet his ideas still spark conversations around morality, governance, and personal development. His impact isn't just limited to China. Confucian values have deeply influenced Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and to some extent the global mindset of ethics and etiquette. But what exactly are these teachings? And why, centuries after his death, does Confucius's influence resonate so strongly? In this video, we're going to explore his philosophical vision in a relatable way, using examples that will make sense to a contemporary Western audience. Through anecdotes, historical context, and modern parallels, we'll unravel the core principles of Confucianism, such as benevolence, respect, filial piety, and ritual propriety, and see how they've sculpted not only dynasties and political systems, but also everyday social interactions. My goal is to offer you a meeting ground between East and West, a way for you to see how Confucian teachings can shed light on human relationships, community values, and personal growth. By the end of this video, you may discover that these ancient insights can be surprisingly relevant to modern life in places like the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, or anywhere else in the Western world. So, let's dive in and get to know Confucius, the sage whose conversations and teachings paved the way for a civilization's moral compass. Confucius was born around 551 BCE in the Lu state of what is now Shandong Province, China. Even as a child, historical anecdotes describe him as curious about rituals and codes of proper behavior. He lived during a time known as the Spring and Autumn period, an era of political upheaval and frequent conflict between various feudal states. This turbulence shaped his vision of how society should function: a stable, harmonious social order based on moral leadership rather than coercive force. He was not simply a philosopher in an ivory tower. He started as a government official and then became a teacher who attracted numerous students. These students compiled his conversations and lessons into texts such as the Analects, which to this day remain a cornerstone for understanding his philosophy. But unlike many philosophers whose lofty ideas are overshadowed by reams of technical jargon, Confucius grounded his wisdom in the details of everyday life. Family dynamics, community interactions, and the responsibilities of rulers to their subjects were central to his outlook. He believed that a society's well-being begins at home, with the cultivation of personal virtue and ethical conduct, and then expands outward to shape larger communities and institutions. While his teachings were originally designed for a social structure quite different from what we have today, the underlying moral and psychological insights still resonate. After all, our core human dilemmas, how to treat others, how to lead responsibly, and how to live an honorable life, are timeless. In that sense, Confucius stands shoulder to shoulder with great Western moral philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, or even modern thinkers who grapple with universal human concerns. It's important to note that Confucius did not emerge in a vacuum. China's Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods saw multiple philosophical schools vying for influence in a land plagued by conflict. This environment was a crucible for intellectual thought, giving rise to the so-called 100 schools of thought, which included not just Confucianism, but also Taoism, legalism, Mohism, and others. Each school proposed ways to achieve social harmony and good governance. While Taoism might emphasize living in accordance with the natural way, Confucianism was more focused on social and ethical structures. After Confucius's death, his disciples continued to promote and refine his ideas. By the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, Confucianism found imperial sponsorship. The civil service exams, a pivotal feature of Chinese bureaucratic governance, were strongly based on Confucian texts. Passing these exams was the route to becoming an influential scholar official, making Confucianism deeply ingrained in the intellectual and administrative backbone of China, for centuries. This official endorsement helped ensure that Confucius's teachings became the bedrock of Chinese moral and social life, eventually permeating neighboring countries through cultural exchange, conquest, trade, and scholarship. In essence, Confucianism wasn't just a philosophy or religion in the Western sense. It was, for a very long time, the default moral code of Chinese society. When neighboring cultures like Korea, Japan, and Vietnam engaged with Chinese civilization, they adapted these teachings to their own historical and cultural contexts. This cross-pollination is why Confucianism continues to be a powerful force shaping East Asian family structures, social hierarchies, education systems, and ethical worldviews. At the heart of Confucian thought is the concept of Ren, often translated as benevolence, humaneness, or kindness. But it's much more than simply being nice. Ren encapsulates the idea of empathy, of recognizing our shared humanity and acting in a way that genuinely seeks the well-being of others. Confucius believed that if individuals cultivated Ren, they would naturally create respectful and harmonious relationships, whether with family members, colleagues, or even strangers. To bring it into a modern Western context, think of Ren as the driving force behind charitable actions, volunteering, or even smaller daily gestures like holding the door for someone or listening to a friend in need. It's that core sense of caring and concern for others, which, according to Confucius, has the potential to ripple outward and unify communities. Instead of relying solely on strict laws or punishment to maintain social order, Confucius advocated that Ren, cultivated from within, was a more powerful and genuine means of guiding human behavior. In the Analects, there's a famous exchange where a disciple asks Confucius to define Ren. He replies, "Do not do unto others what you would not want done unto you." This golden rule might sound familiar, as it resonates with teachings found in many religions and moral systems worldwide. It's one of those universal principles that speak to our collective conscience, reminding us that empathy is a cornerstone of moral life. Confucius believed this quality, when nurtured, transforms us into moral agents who can build a just and caring society. Another pillar of Confucius's teachings is Li, sometimes translated as ritual propriety. The term ritual might bring to mind grand religious ceremonies, but Li also extends to everyday etiquette, mannerisms, and the respect we show in ordinary interactions. For Confucius, rituals and formalities are not empty gestures. They are symbolic acts that cultivate discipline, respect, and harmony within the individual and the community. So, how does that resonate with Western life today? Consider that we in the West also have social norms and customs. Standing in line politely, shaking hands during greetings, saying please and thank you. While these might seem trivial, they serve to structure our interactions and remind us that others deserve courtesy. For Confucius, Li was a way of showing moral intention in concrete, visible ways. Through practicing ritual propriety, people internalize respect for others and for the social order. Moreover, Li's emphasis on reverence for traditions does not necessarily equate to blind obedience or suppression of individuality. Rather, it's about understanding that society functions more smoothly when people participate in shared customs that foster mutual respect. Think of it as the civic spirit we often talk about in modern societies, something that holds communities together beyond legal mandates or self-interest. In Confucian thought, Li is that cultural glue. It's about the spirit behind the rules, not just the rules themselves. One of the most distinctive aspects of Confucian thought is Xiao, or filial piety. This is the virtue of respecting and caring for one's parents and ancestors. In modern Western societies, where the focus is often on individual autonomy, the Confucian idea of filial piety can initially seem foreign or overly hierarchical. But let's break down why this concept has been so central in East Asian cultures for centuries. For Confucius, the family is the foundational building block of society. If you can learn to care for and respect those closest to you, you can extend that same attitude of responsibility and empathy to your neighborhood, your workplace, and ultimately your nation. Xiao encourages us to remember that we owe a moral debt to those who have given us life, nurtured us, and shaped who we are. It's an acknowledgement of the intergenerational bonds that form our sense of identity. In more modern, Western contexts, we certainly have similar values. Many of us believe in honoring our parents, visiting them, and ensuring their well-being. However, the Confucian emphasis on filial piety is often more formalized and deeply woven into social expectations in East Asia. From celebrating major holidays with parents and ancestors to ensuring the continuation of the family line, these traditions reflect a cultural world where an individual's role is never seen in isolation, but always as part of a familial network. Does this mean you must unquestioningly obey your parents in all matters? Not necessarily. Confucius also taught that it's a child's duty to gently point out if a parent is acting immorally. True filial piety involves moral guidance in both directions, rooted in love and respect. In modern times, as societies evolve and become more global, interpretations of Xiao also adapt. But the core message remains: we're all connected through bonds of care and responsibility, and it starts at home. Central to understanding Confucian thought is the idea that society is structured by key relationships. Confucius identified 5 relationships that are critical for social harmony. 1. Ruler and subject. 2. Father and son. 3. Husband and wife. 4. Older brother and younger brother. 5. Friend and friend. In each of these pairings, there is a sense of mutual obligation and respect. The ruler must be benevolent and caring, while the subject must be loyal. The father, or parent, should guide and nurture, while the son, or child, should show respect and obedience. And while some of these pairings reflect hierarchical roles, the ideal is that both sides recognize their duties toward the other. For instance, in a marriage, the husband traditionally has a protective role, but he's also expected to treat his wife with kindness and consideration. To a Western audience, some of these roles might seem outdated or overly patriarchal, especially if read in their most traditional form. However, it's essential to interpret them within their historical context. In Confucius's time, these 5 relationships summarize the basic structure of social life. As society has evolved, many modern Confucian scholars argue that the core idea, mutual respect and clearly defined responsibilities, can be adapted. If we think of leadership in a workplace today, we see echoes of the ruler-subject relationship. A good boss leads through mentorship and fairness, while employees respond with loyalty and diligence. Friends, of course, rely on reciprocity. If one friend is always giving and the other always taking, that relationship quickly becomes unbalanced. Understanding these relationships can help us navigate social dynamics in a constructive way, reminding us that our roles, whether as leaders, colleagues, family members, or friends, come with moral responsibilities. Confucius often spoke of the Junzi, a term variously translated as gentleman, superior person, or exemplary individual. This is the ethical and moral ideal in Confucian thought, a person who embodies virtues such as ren, benevolence, li, proper conduct, and xiao, filial piety. The Junzi lives by an internal moral compass, continually striving to perfect both character and conduct. If you're thinking of a perfect person, that's not quite it. The Junzi isn't someone who never makes mistakes, but rather someone committed to ongoing self-improvement. It's a guiding North Star for personal growth, suggesting that the path to virtue is a lifelong process. In modern Western contexts, this resonates with the idea of self-actualization or moral development, where we continually reflect on our actions and strive to become better versions of ourselves. Crucially, the Junzi is not guided by fear of punishment or pursuit of personal gain, but by moral duty. Confucius believed that if leaders, especially rulers, could embody these virtues, their example would inspire citizens to also live honorably, creating a just and harmonious society from the top down. Even in a democracy like the United States, we can appreciate the notion that leadership at any level, politics, business, community, can and should be anchored in moral integrity rather than personal ambition. The Junzi is a timeless role model for how to align private ethics with public responsibility. We've now explored Confucius's life, the chaotic era that shaped his thinking, and the core teachings, Ren, Li, Xiao, and the 5 relationships, plus the concept of the Junzi. These values have guided people for over 2,000 years, influencing not just personal ethics but entire societies. In Part 2, we'll dive into how Confucianism shaped governance and everyday life across East Asia, from imperial courts in China to the samurai code in Japan, and see how it resonates in our modern world. If you're ready to learn how these ancient ideas still matter today, make sure to watch Part 2 right after this, or subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss its release. Thank you for joining me in uncovering the wisdom of Confucius. I'll see you in the next video.